Welcome.
Welcome to the Everything podcast, and in this episode I'm going to be reviewing the first Big Finish of Class, or the first episode in the Big Finish era of Class, which, as I mentioned in yesterday's episode, there are 13 episodes as of recording. There might be more announced, or hopefully there is, with the last episode, which is going to be about 2-ish weeks away. But yes, that's what I'm going to be covering for the next more than a couple of episodes, for the next 13 episodes. Well, 14 actually, because there'll be the Empire of Death review in there somewhere as well, which is the Doctor Who Season 1 finale, which I talked about in yesterday's episode, where I reviewed Season 1, Episode 7, The Legend of Ruby Sunday. Go check that out if you haven't already. But back to this episode where, as I say, we are starting off the Big Finish era of Class. But before I get to my review on the first episode, we've got the cast list, which is the main cast is identical to the TV show, and then we've got a few more characters. Now, this cast list is not specific to this episode, it's for the box sets of 3 stories, which will cover this episode, tomorrow's episode, and the day after. So we have Greg Austin as Charlie, Freddie Alciad as Ram, Sophie Hopkins as April, Vivian Opera as Tanya, Georgian Renzo as Mateus, Catherine Kelly as Miss Quill, Lou Caulfield as Marta, Scott Harron as Jason, Rhys Isaac Jones as Thomas, Deirdre Mullins as Mab, Joe Shear as Aubrey, Jasmine M. Stewart as the Mayor, Liz Sutherland Lim as Alicia, I think, and Gavin Swift as Boris. This episode, which was called Gifted, was written by Roy Gill and directed by Scott Hancock. The synopsis for this episode is: when a talent scout arrives in Shoreditch, Ram sees an opportunity to further his goals, whilst April strikes up a friendship with new boy Thomas Laneford. Their choices draw all 3 to Carter Hall House. But who is the mysterious Mab that waits for them there? Class Volume 1, or what's it called? Class the Audio Adventures Volume 1. But this episode specifically was released in August 2018. I couldn't find the exact date, so it's going to be the month for the audio reviews. But my opinion of this episode is I loved hearing Freddie and Sophie reprise their roles. I liked the references to the TV episodes, which will become clear in my review, and I enjoyed the development of April and Ram's relationship. But without further ado, here is my review of Class Big Finish 1.1 Gifted. A car crash nearly takes place. A bike gets broken. Mab introduces herself. Mab invites the man involved in the car crash to her house to rest. The man assumes Mab has a boyfriend. Mab corrects him. Mab also corrects him when he assumes she has a husband. The man plays the guitar. Mab seems to kill Thomas. We then have the title sequence with school bell rings. April wants to start a study group. Ram mocks this. Ram tells April why Charlie isn't interested in joining her study group. Ram chooses football practice over joining April's study group. April is bumped into. April's bumper recites some poetry. Thomas introduces himself to April. April promises Thomas food at her study group. Thomas attends football practice with Ram. Ram tells Thomas where the football team meets after school. Thomas declines. Thomas tells Ram about joining April's study group. Thomas and April are the only 2 attendees of the study group. Thomas tells April about football and his position. April explains an online playlist to Thomas. April tells Thomas about her music preferences. Thomas suggests that him and April start a band. April tells Thomas why that can't happen at the moment. A woman tells Ram all the information she knows about him. This woman is a talent scout. The woman is Mab. Mab knows about the Doctor giving a prosthetic leg to Ram in episode 1 of the TV show. Thomas takes April to the house where Mab lives, the same house that Mab tells Ram about. Thomas tells April that he lives with Mab. April believes Mab is rich. April believes Thomas smells of roses. Thomas warns April about Mab. April introduces herself to Mab. Ram arrives at Thomas and Mab's house. April mentions her mother's knitting collection. Thomas believes Mab is a witch. April reads some poetry referencing Mab and Thomas's house. Ram complains to Mab about his prosthetic leg. Ram mentions the events of episodes 1, 2 and 3 of the TV show to Mab. Thomas tells April the importance of ballads. Thomas asks April to read a ballad. Thomas disappears. Thomas finds Ram talking to Mab. Thomas warns Ram about Mab. April and Ram find each other. Thomas refers to Mab as a parasite. Ram and April are forcibly transported somewhere. Ram is overconfident about potentially playing in a school football match. Ram's football coach mentions how good of a football player Thomas is. Ram's coach believes Ram has anger management issues. One of April's teachers is impressed at April's record collection. April seems to remember the poem that Thomas recited, containing a warning about his and Mab's house. Ram's phone has been confiscated. Ram has been told to visit the school's head teacher. Ram tells April about his conversation with his football coach. Ram outlines his football aspirations to April. April references sharing a heart with Cora Keenis. April remembers Thomas. April and Ram attempt to find Thomas. April explains the meaning of a poem to Ram. Ram and April attempt to discover Mab's true intentions. April reunites with Thomas. Thomas tells April and Ram that he first met Mab in 1967. Thomas explains why he continued to meet up with Mab. Ram tells April about Mab's promise to him. April and Ram confront Mab. Mab ages Thomas. Thomas dies. Mab mind controls Ram. April pleads for Ram to not listen to him. April reminds Ram of Mab's power. Mab insults April. Mab mentions April's father. April interrupts Ram's football match. Ram insults April. Mab and April fight over Ram. April wins. Ram and April kiss. Ram informs April of a ban enforced on her about attending school football matches. April plans on writing a song about Thomas and Ram. And that's the end of the actual review of the episode, but there's some bits and pieces from the behind the scenes interviews that I wanted to talk about. Scott Hancock, as I mentioned earlier, is the director of this episode, talks to the cast of this episode. Safadi Asiad and Sophie Hopkins talk about returning to their roles of Ram and April respectively. Fadi mentions working on episode 6, which is the episode where there's very little Miss Quill, and it's Mateusz, Ram, April, Charlie and Tanya all stuck in a classroom with a truth rock. Go and check out my review for all of class, which will be somewhere linked somewhere. I think it's at the beginning and end of this episode actually. Will be obviously all of the reviews because I've now finished. Deirdre and Reese talk about their roles as Mab and Tam respectively, and that's it for my review. Review for class Big Finish 1.1 titled Gifted, as well as the behind the scenes interviews for Gifted. Next time on the Everything Podcast, I'll be reviewing the Big Finish era of Class 1.2 titled Life Experience. Here is the trailer for Class Volume, or the Big Finish era of Class. But back to this episode, let me know what you thought about Gifted if you listened to it, not watched it. I'm going to have to get used to changing the vocabulary if you listened to it, and my review if you didn't. Put your comments, both of those, in the comments below, as well as anything else you want to cover the channel. So it could be a review suggestion for a TV show or movie, or it should be something completely different like a book, a comic, or an article, or some news about your favourite TV show or movie you would like me to cover and talk about. Put those in the comments below as well. And remember, you can also like, comment and subscribe. And that's it for this episode of the Everything Podcast. Goodbye.